coming here, and I went on the PSA-TEC page, and I saw what programs and what sessions you had, and I'm always amazed at what a great job PSA does. We've always been, the association has always been known for doing a great job of technical training, but now I look at the agenda and it's jam-packed with customer service issues, running a profitable business, doing all the things you need to do to be a great integrator. It's no longer about just being the industry magicians that you are and being able to put a great system together. It's about running a profitable and professional business. So clearly the industry is changing, and the agenda is a reflection of how that industry is changing. For those of you who were here last year, you probably recognize most of the people on the panel, but I'd like to introduce them to you for those of you who don't know them. I'm going to everybody, of course, knows Bill Bozeman. He is our host today, and I have to compliment him and Sharon Shaw and the rest of the staff for putting on this wonderful program. I thank you very much, Bill, on behalf of all of us. But what you may not know about Bill, prior to being president and CEO of PSA Security Network, he was a very successful systems integrator. And I think what makes him the great leader that he is of PSA is that he has lived in your shoes. He knows exactly what you do every day and what you have to do to be successful in business. What you may not know about PSA Security Network is that you, the 200 members of the co-op, represent the world's largest security co-op in the, I said that, the world's largest co-op, and that your 200 plus members install and design about $2 billion worth of security systems annually. I think Bill has been talking about add recurring revenue, add recurring revenue. So we've again invited an expert on monitoring and recurring revenue. We have Dave Carter, who is the managing director of the Security Network of America. And if you're not familiar with that group, they really represent 29 of the industry's leading monitoring companies. Every one of them is listed on the SDM 100 list, and they install over $80 million worth of security equipment annually and have over 600,000 customers with, that they monitor. Like Bill, David was also a successful business manager. He lived in the shoes of the monitoring companies, and he too is here to help us understand what's happening in the state of the industry as it represents monitoring and RMR. Another thing Bill has been telling us for several years is you have to learn IT, you have to learn IT. It's not an option anymore. And we're very fortunate to have Paul Cronin, who is the managing director or executive of One in Service. They have an affiliation with PSA, and if you're not familiar with the group, they have 55 offices around North America, and they represent $1 billion worth of networking solutions annually. So Paul is a wonderful person to have here. He represents, or about 50% of his time, he manages the One in Service business, but he's also the executive vice president of one of the member companies called Atrion, and that's a $45 million One in Service member. So again, are you beginning to see a trend here? The people who manage these organizations successfully are or have been very successful business owners. New on this panel is Matthew Ladd, and you think you know him, and you probably do, as the person who is president of the Protection Bureau, and of course a member of PSA. But he's not here representing the Protection Bureau. He is here representing an organization called SecurityNet. And the reason Bill invited Matt is to talk about what the larger systems integrators do. They've done a pretty amazing job. They too are one of the premier organizations in our industry. They have 50 regional offices in North America and employ over 1,200 security professionals between them. By working together, they really bring the best of both worlds together. What they do is they are able to provide regional service and a national presence. The other person that we have that's new to us this year is Tony Whaley. I hope I have pronounced that right. And Tony is here. Again, he is vice president of a company, RTKL, which I don't know, I'm sorry, where he leads the company's telecommunication design team. But like Matt, he's not here just representing his company. He is here representing all of Bixby. And if you're not familiar with Bixby, it's an association for the consultants and designers of telecommunications. Again, they see the customer from a very different perspective than you do, so understanding the state of the industry, you really have to understand what these folks are designing and what they're hearing from their customers. If you're not familiar with Bixby, they started in 1973 with a few telecommunication companies or people who wanted to do their jobs better, and today they have over 23,000 members. And rounding out our panel, and I hate to say he's never least, but he's always last, because I do this in alphabetical order, is Chuck Wilson, who we're delighted is with us again. Chuck is the executive director of the National System Sound Contractors Association, and last year on this panel he kind of hit us on the side of the head with some regulations that were affecting everybody's business and how you pay subcontractors, and so we hope this year he'll be able to give us some additional information. And his organization, some of you may be members of the National Sound Contractors, or NSCA. That industry is in flux also as you're moving away from commercial sound to commercial building and mass evacuation. So Chuck represents NSCA, and just like many of the others here on the panel, before he was executive director there, he was also a successful system sound contractor. He's lived in your shoes. So I don't think there is any panel in the industry or any group of people who can help you understand the state of the industry than these 6 gentlemen. So now that you know them, let me get started. So, well, let me start by telling you, when I was asked to do this, I painstakingly developed about 12 questions, narrowed it down to 6, and I'm guessing I'll get to ask 1, because I think this group takes their own lead, and as a good moderator, I'll introduce them and then get the heck out of the way. So I'm going to start with the first question that I asked each of them to be prepared to answer, and I'm going to start with Bill as our host. I think that's only right. So from your vantage point, Bill, and then I'm going to ask all of you to answer the same question, what do you think the most significant challenges are facing systems integrators today?
I'll focus, Sandy, on the independent, privately owned systems integrator, because, of course, we have several different segments of the community. And I'm going to focus on the financial side of this and not necessarily on the technical challenges. I would think that the majority of the smaller, independently owned integrators have cash flow issues simply because the business model of our traditional PSA-TEC member is a contractor model. So consequently, each job going forward has to be profitable and successful, and that of course ties into skill sets with excuse me, project management, etc. The banks are unfriendly right now to the small business person. I don't think anybody would argue with that. They're downright unfriendly regardless of what the administration says. So cash flow becomes an issue. If you don't have some type of steady cash flow model, you must make each and every job successful. If each and every job isn't cash flowing itself and you don't have the opportunity to go back to the bank and ask for a larger line of credit, then problems develop. And I really do believe that the major challenge for the independently owned systems integrator isn't necessarily understanding the latest and greatest technology. It's more in tune to how to run the business properly, how to run the business successfully, how to cash flow the business with the model that you currently have. Adapting to a new model is difficult. I know I've been preaching this for many years, but I also understand how difficult it is because I was in your shoes. And by the way, I was able to accomplish that thanks to guys like Dave Carter in the alarm industry who taught me the value of a new and different type of business model. Which I hopefully he will expound on a bit. But that, Sandy, is really the the chief problem or the main problem that I see. And I hope that everyone doesn't, and this is a technical meeting, but we're trying very hard to introduce new skill sets and new opportunities for our integrators. So that's where I see it. I see it more as a business structure problem than I do a technical problem or even a sales problem for that matter.
I'm glad you brought that up, Bill, and certainly what you're going to experience over the next few days and what you have been seeing is that the session now at PSA-TEC is really focused on helping you compete, and certainly the financial side is an important metric, what keeps you alive. Thank you for bringing that up. Dave?
Thank you, Sandy. First, let me say you used two words in introducing the panel that I'm not sure that I'm worthy of, and that's distinguished and expert. So. But
That's
I'll
what
try.
Bill told me to say, though.
Okay. You know, remember, our guys, we're in the recurring revenue business. We simply use security services to get recurring revenue. That is our guys' number one focus. In fact, a vast majority of our companies will not do a job that does not have recurring revenue associated with it. Just won't do it, no matter what it is. So remember that as I talk. I think the biggest challenge that our companies face today is protecting and growing that recurring revenue stream in a changing marketplace. Now, what do I mean by changing marketplace? First off, you know, we're faced with new entrants coming into the security services space that want to attack our existing base of customers with a different prospect of business. First off, you have Comcast. Comcast is entering the business with their Xfinity product that will bundle cable, telephone, television, along with web, remote access, remote control, video, security, energy management, and home systems. Clearly, they're coming into our space. They want additional revenue. They want that additional revenue growth stream. Verizon has announced they're coming into the space with energy management and security, even down to the point where they're talking about when someone pushes the doorbell on your front door, it will send a picture of the person at the door to your phone immediately, so you know who's at the door and you can let them in or you can talk with them. We have AT&T. AT&T is coming in. If you know, they acquired a company called Zanbu, which is a internet smart home solutions company, back in December. What's the first thing they've done? They've announced to all the dealer base that was selling the Zanbu product that they're canceling all the dealers effective this July. Why? Because they want to go direct. So you've got these large entities that are coming into our space that present challenges for our companies as far as what the business mix should be in the future, what their go-to-market strategy needs to be able to compete with the new entrants. Same thing's happening on the existing company side. We see the existing companies, the larger ones that are continually refreshing their go-to-market strategies. ADT Pulse, their ADT Pulse system, they're adding a new door locking feature where you can lock and unlock your doors remotely, give access to a housekeeper, whatever. Little nuances, but we have Vivint, who used to be Apex Security, Apex Alarms. They acquired a company called Meter Solutions, and now they're expanding into the meter solutions business by adding expanded home and energy management services. So, you know, it's a very quickly changing marketplace for our companies, and all of these companies are interested in our space because it is a recurring revenue component that fits in directly with the recurring revenue businesses that they operate today. Beyond that, I think that is truly our number one concern. Beyond that is a secondary concern which the industry is facing, and that is the continued evolution of the telephone communications network. Our companies have relied pretty exclusively for 30 years on the POTS lines, and they are going away. Everything is going to be IP going forward, and that's a fundamental change in the existing customer base that we serve, our existing customer base of about 600,000 customers, that 90% of them are on POTS lines and have to be converted. So that's a technical challenge, but it's also a marketing challenge because you've got to reintroduce to the homeowner or the business owner a new way of communicating, a new way of doing things, which always gives them the chance or the opportunity to look around and make sure that you're the provider they want to use going forward. So I think those are the couple things that our guys are really facing today.
I think you've hit the nail on the head. You've really addressed the two issues that are fundamental to the recurring revenue business, is protecting your customer base. And when they say protecting the customer base, it's more than just keeping your customer. It's keeping that recurring revenue and the valuation that that revenue has to a company. I'm sure you've heard Bill mention this many times, but the multiples for systems integrators is significantly lower than it is for an alarm monitoring company. And then technology, if you think about how fast technology is moving, and here our industry relies on a 30-year-old technology. What a great technology that's been, but you're right. Changing it is going to make a big difference to our marketplace. Paul, you're the IT guy here, and certainly you're changing our marketplace as we knew it once before. What do you think is the biggest threat to systems integrators?
I believe that it's attracting, developing, and retaining talent. We live in a world of changing times where these new convergence has introduced a lot of new types of applications, complexity, a lot of different types of vendor-type solutions as well. Client demand is very high, and so for us to be able to, one, find the right type of skill sets, two, to develop them. And I wouldn't say that it's just at the engineering level. I would say it's leadership focused. I would say it's sales focused. I think finding talent, we are really the sum of our people. And I believe as we look out as the industry with the pent-up demand, some of the trends that we in the networking industry see, things are going to get really tough, really tough. Talent's going to become very short, and so you need to be able to create a leverage model, bringing in young talent, or at least talent that can be molded and kind of built up through apprenticeship programs, internship programs, and that's actually, Sandy, what I think. I think it's all about talent.
I think, again, I'm glad we have such good talent on this panel, because that was an issue. If you would have looked down the aisles of an ISC show prior to 9/11, you would have seen gray hair or bald hair, sorry. That, to me, is a sign that we've kept good people, but there's no youth. And when you don't have youth and you can't attract talent, you have a problem with an industry going away. And you're absolutely right. For us to be continually growing as a market, we really have to attract talent. So now, Matthew, now that you're here in the hot seat for the first time, tell us what you think is the biggest challenge. And as a systems integrator, almost as a actually national systems integrator, how do you see the challenge?
Well, first of all, the hardest thing is following these three guys who are definitely experts and pretty much covered a lot of things that I had down for notes, so that makes it even more difficult. But one of the challenges we're seeing in the systems integrator market is where the larger projects, when they come out, they're going in at much lower margins than they used to be. And there was always a capability on doing these kind of projects where you had a back end of add-on business later, which hopefully will go at higher margins. But we're seeing now that the customers are continually bidding. So you might win a large project at a tight margin, and then when the next edition comes on, that goes out to bid again, and you might actually lose the client altogether. So that's one of the aspects that we've seen and need to address. So that also then means to keep the clients and to be successful, you have to have a strong staff. Project management is probably one of the biggest, most important pieces of the companies now. You're going to take these jobs at tighter margins, you've got to make sure they come out as you had planned. And so getting highly qualified professional project managers is extremely important. Cash flow management is extremely important now. Also, because of the fact that these jobs are tighter, we're finding that payment from the projects are getting drawn out. Clients are taking longer and longer to pay. Even in some cases, there's less even progress payments. So you're having to deal with that cash, but at the same time, we have to pay the PSAs and the other manufacturers that we purchase from who really haven't changed their model, and they've actually gone to 30, stay at 30. then the last thing I wrote down was about product. I guess it would be the need to have multiple product lines. Clients are now speccing more times what products is their favorite, and you need to bring on these lines. And as you bring on the lines, that again costs more training, stocking, and again affects your overall cash management.
I think those are all good points as well, and you're right, it's hard to follow these three. But you brought up something new here in project management, and there's some good courses here over the next couple of days. You have to be, if you're running lean, you really have to be very, very good at what you do. Tony, from your perspective, what do you see?
Well, from my perspective, first of all, RTKL, we're an architect and engineering firm, and therefore we actually represent the owners when it comes to designing facilities, whether it's for data centers, whether it's for upgrades and security. So I see things from a very different perspective than a lot of folks, because we're responsible for actually generating the RFPs that people will bid off of, as well as overseeing the integration and the construction. And some of the things that are happening within the industry that are definitely big changes is the integrated delivery model that the A&E world is going into. And it's very much different than design build, in the fact that from the designer to the construction manager to the integrator, everyone has joint liability for the project. So if the project goes south, everybody is all liable, the entire team. Therefore, it's important that you actually learn how to work with the design elements, if you're an integrator, as well as with the construction managers, to reduce costs, to look at how you can save the project money and how you can actually deliver it on time, which goes back to that project management being very important, because without proper project management, then you're going to see in the future, because of cost, the money that we've heard about, everyone's trying to save money, you're going to see more and more the people that are delivering a security system, whether it's for a small facility or for a large facility, new or old or design build, that the whole team's going to be liable. Something else that's very unique that's happening in the industry is, and as integrators, you've probably been given design sets of documents, construction documents in the past, is the way these construction documents are being created. There's a new thing called building information modeling, and it's all 3D modeling for a facility, so that as we're creating the facility, you actually can visualize the cameras right then and there before they're ever installed. You can visualize the infrastructure, the trays, the background, so they can see that it doesn't actually interfere with cable tray or with sprinkler systems or with HVAC. So the whole design industry is going through a big change of how we deliver it. We suspect that AutoCAD will not be there 10 years from now, so that the basic packages that you got before, they will look the same, but how they were created is going to be vastly different. And for you, as far as getting your piece of that information into that set, you're going to have people that understand what building information modeling is. And you're going to have project managers that understand it and can coordinate a delivery set to be designed. And I know that doesn't affect residential a lot, but it's very key in commercial, in hospitals, and in government facilities. So those are the two big challenges I think you have coming forward.
I think, Tony, I'm thrilled that you're on the panel, because I think what you bring up is really what these folks need to understand. What they do is really going to change dramatically in how they do it in the next few years. Chuck, I always count on you for something that's going to help us. So,
well, they were all wrong. These guys. They don't know. No, that's an excellent summary of everything I would have said there. And I think, because I don't want to repeat what they said, but accurate all the way down the line here. BIM is something that it's just going to blindside people, is what I believe, because of the investment and the risk and all that. Starting backwards, like Tony said, when you're part of the design build team, or part of this integrated project design, as he was referring to, you also take on some of the liability, and understanding risk and the liability. That's why we talk about errors and omission insurance and all this stuff a lot, is we've got to be properly managing the risk-reward factor. And with the lower margins, that's tough to do. So I always refer to the business today as like operating without a safety net. If your margins are so lean going in, there's no place to make it up on the labor side. And we used to always have the margin, so if we forgot some overtime or some overnight deliveries or things like that, we always had a little bit of buffer there. Whoever gets the job today has no buffer. There's more and more competitors on every job, so you go in lean, and the successful contractor is the one that went in the leanest with no margins whatsoever. So I think the biggest challenge is profitability on every job, as what was mentioned, and that something seems to go wrong on every job today, be it the project, the site condition wasn't as we thought, it wasn't ready when we rolled the trucks, you know, whatever the case is, margins are being constantly challenged, and there's a lot of you know, lean thinking out there, and that may lead to some inferior work and things of that nature. We're also starting to see some real challenges with our brand attachment. And what I mean by that is we have positioned our companies leading with a certain group of manufacturers, and as it is today, a lot of the reps are out there demoing products directly to the end users, and some of those products are a lot less expensive than what we lead with. So then we're challenged with, okay, what do we do now? You know, we've got this system specified, but someone went in and showed them something that works for a whole lot less money. What do we do? So that's the constant thing that Bill's having to deal with, probably with PSA, is making sure that you all have access to the leading brands, both in the way they work and in the way that they provide value to the end users. So it is always something. My day is spent talking to integrators. Almost all day long, I'm talking to people about their business. And the big thing that I see in the last 3 years is I've been trying to keep people's enthusiasm for running a business in today's economy up. So at an overarching level, I'm trying to help people understand that there's excitement and enthusiasm, that the better times are ahead of us, and to constantly be thinking about what their business will look like and the investment necessary to keep a top-notch company going. So that's what I do day in and day out, is just try to, you know, stoke that fire and keep people's excitement and enthusiasm up, because I've been seeing it waning of late with all the challenges. So
well,
that's what I see.
I appreciate that, and you're absolutely right. You know, it's funny, we started the session with Bill talking about the financial challenges and finished with Tony's comment, not the session, but the question, with the same kind of a comment. And it's just true. If you think about last year's session, we were talking about coming out of a recession. I didn't hear that come up at all this year. So the things, it sounds like we have customers. The challenge is how we manage them, what technology we use, what partners we have, and how we're able to work with the banks and get them financed. It's all different challenges this year than it was last, and I would expect next year we'll have different issues. Before we move on to the next question, there are so many good topics brought up. I'm going to let the panelists, if you want to expand on anything or comment on what some of the other folks said, please feel free.
I'd like to elaborate on one thing. We were talking about the technology, the POTS circuits, and the actual moving from one type of technology to the other. Myself and my entire team, my entire staff, we're all IT-centric, whether you're a security designer or an audiovisual designer or a wireless designer. But one of the things that we have seen the evolution is the integrated backbone. Everything is going to be an IP-based backbone. And therefore, to tool up your integrators to understand not just the actual devices, but the infrastructure that they're going to ride upon, knowing that that's an integrated platform, is going to be to your advantage. And looking at product lines that integrate clients anymore, they want one set of fiber to do everything. And in a typical hospital, you'll have a backbone that will support not only the access control, but it'll also infinite abduction. Everything is going on the same integrated backbone. So I thought that was very good to talk about the fact that plain old telephone service is going away, and that mostly everything is going to an IP-based backbone. And I thought that was a very good observation.
Anybody else have any comments? Sure.
You know, Tony, you made the comment about the BIM, which is a thing that we're seeing on these larger projects now. And you run into the situation of what is on the system, what is on that 3D model, and what is really there, because now you're relying on accuracy of other trades. That in the past, field decisions could be made, pipes could be run differently, different chases could be created. Now you can't do that anymore. And we've been finding that we work hard on these models, make sure they're exact, and then get out to the site, and it's completely different. And so now you're having to go back and redo your drawing. And so the amount of drawing time, or for our group we call it engineering, is something that is at times not always enough hours are not captured for it. And it becomes a real impact on other projects.
And a lot of it at your own expense. You have to be very careful, because with the whole integrated delivery, the whole process is for the owner to have the advantage, the sole advantage, because once he signed the contract that this is your fee, it's your fee, and it's very hard to do like the old days where you could say, hey, this is a change order. It's now when you've been a part of this process since day one, how come you didn't get it right?
Right. Yeah, good point.
Sandy, one comment on the financial end. You know, there are banks that understand a business model that brings in some type of cash flow, steady state, predictable cash flow. There are banks. It might not be your bank. It might not be your bank, but there are banks out there that understand, right, Dave? Yes.
Yeah.
There are banks. We have actually introduced a program, Susquehanna, which is out of Philadelphia, will be here tomorrow. They get it. They understand. They understand the traditional systems integrator model, which most banks do not. It's kind of easy to understand a business that cash flows itself and spins off free cash flow. It's much more difficult to respect as if you're a banker and appreciate a contractor model. But we actually have one of those too, Sandy.
That's great.
So stop by and talk to Susquehanna. So it's not hopeless. There are banks, but I mean, really, you may have to get off your duff and make some changes with who you're dealing with, rather than just say, well, my bank's not cooperating with me. They won't give me a better line. They won't help me, because there are banks out there that do understand.
Bill keeps talking about all the things that PSA brings to you, and you're right in sync with what they have to learn. And again, the sessions and what you're doing here is a total reflection of what has to happen. I'm going to move on to the next question, and I think this comes near and dear to all of your hearts, is running your business today is so different than it was years ago. I'm going to ask the panelists, and anybody can speak in any order they'd like, is what do you think systems integrators should be doing now to make anything in staffing, operations, pricing that will help them compete in the future? So it's up to you. Anybody? Go ahead. You don't even have to wait to be last, Chuck.
Yeah. You want me to go first?
Please.
Well, somebody said it's about project management earlier, and I couldn't agree more, is that years ago, like when I had my company, it was easy to make money by comparison to today, I think. You know, you could get by with more things. We had more margins on the equipment. We had a little bit more labor built in for contingencies, you know, not as much competition from, you know, and I think the competition today is coming from these non-traditional type companies like we talked about, fueled probably by mergers and acquisitions. But years ago, it was pretty easy to do it, you know, and you didn't have to be so sophisticated. Nowadays, I think, you know, tracking labor and tracking people and the cost of labor and everything is so expensive that it just really changed everything. One of the big challenges I hear about from our members who call in is signing contracts that they don't really understand. The contracting portion of it has become so complicated. Again, perhaps a byproduct of the influence from the IT world is that we're signing contracts that have language in there that we truly do not understand that well. So we just sign it, get the job, hope everybody pays their bills and all that, you know, and it's just a lot more complicated. It's just not as easy as it once was.
And you can't just start in the business undercapitalized anymore. Boy, yeah. I remember we used to be able to start a business
to show how true what Chuck is saying. In 2003, RTKL, we had one legal advisor. We have 7 lawyers now. You know, and to be honest, we have a team that does nothing but look at service level agreements and contracts, and we've gotten to the point where you can't even bid on a project without first sending the terms and conditions of that RFP to legal to look to see if it's even worth us going into that project, or if we can do that. Just got something back from our legal yesterday that, you know, we can't make that agreement, but let's go ahead and bid it anyway, and then maybe we can negotiate that piece of term and condition. It's so very true that you have to be savvy as a business anymore and looking at the service level agreements and the contracts that you enter into, because right now it's an owner's or it's a buyer's market. And so you have to be very careful there.
That's a great point. David, you have something to say.
Yeah, first off, I can't speak directly from the systems integrator perspective, but from the security services, security systems perspective, and it's been mentioned by everybody here, IT. And where I'm going there is, as far as how to run your businesses better in the future, is not treating IT as the geeky guy in the back room. I've encouraged our companies, I think IT needs to be part of the senior leadership team of every company. It needs to be involved in business decisions and be a part of the business process going forward. Why? Because everything is going to be IT. It's not a technical decision anymore. It is the way the world will be, and business decisions need to be made, including IT, in that senior leadership.
David, I'm so glad you brought that up because nobody really talked about that as yet. So I think that's great. Paul, I know you're going to say something about that.
Well, yes. I think another one of the challenges that the typical network integrator has out in the industry today is working with their clients. IT within an organization for a lot of time has always been about run, about saving money, doing more things efficiently. And they've never really had a seat at the table. So I think from our standpoint, it's working with our clients in a different way to make IT now be the way that a company can grow and can transform the way it goes to market and differentiate itself in the industry. And those are different types of conversations that you need to be able to have. Coming back again to talent and actually having the right skills to be able to have those conversations with your customers, develop the strategies that you can then impart onto your client and actually help them to use technology in this new way. And so I think IT starts at the very top, and I think that's where you need to focus, your organization on being able to meet your clients' needs.
I just did some voice of the customer work, and several of you were kind enough to participate. And what I heard over and over again, and I was really pleased and surprised, is that the people I talked to said, if IT's not sitting at the table at the beginning, I want them there now. I want them to understand what security is, what it does, what it'll impact on their business, because while they may understand IT and some of the storage issues, they don't understand the requirements and how security interacts with it. And so we're seeing already that these folks right out here are embracing IT. It's not a matter of deciding, should I be on the fence anymore? They realize it's core to their business. You were going to say something, Bill?
Yeah, Sandy, it's almost a generational thing that I see with our integrators. And I'll use myself as an example, 30 years in this, but I want to continue my career for another 15 years. So I've got to get with it, right? Bill has to get with it. So I'm going to use social media as an example. Bill absolutely did not get social media. The whole Twitter deal, the whole Facebook deal, the whole deal just seemed ridiculous to Bill. It just did. I'm sorry. I'm just being truthful. But I told myself, you need to get with it. You need to embrace this. Because if you don't, you can't really be a good leader going forward for the next 15 years. The fact that you don't get it is your problem, because that's where it's going, Bill. So get it. So what we did, and I would like to thank the PSA board for this, because quite frankly, I don't think they got it either. You know why? Because they're all my age. They're all from the same gene pool. They all have the same experience. They're all gray-headed and bald, right? So none of us are tweeting each other. We just aren't. I've never received a tweet from Mark Olive. Not one tweet, Mark.
There he goes.
So they were kind enough and smart enough to allow me to learn this business, and PSA as an organization has embraced this. And when we hired our marketing director, that was number one on my list, that this marketing person, and she actually has a master's degree. You can actually get a degree now in social media, which is remarkable. And we have embraced this. The analogy that I'm drawing is, you as a business person you have no choice. You need to embrace IT. You need to embrace change. You need to embrace managed services. You need to get it. If you personally can't handle it, then you need to turn it over to someone who can. And you just be, I don't even know, frankly, if you can even be chairman of the board. You just be owner. You just be owner and go away. You have to embrace these things or you're going to hold your company back. And I know that's tough to say, but I use myself as an analogy because you've got to focus on being a better business person. And I know change is hard, especially for certain generations. I don't know if Ron Etten is here, but anyway, Ron Etten is one of the new generation integrators at PSA, and Steve King, our CFO, and I met with him last night. And when he left, I said, wow, you know, he gets it. I think he's probably still in his 30s. And, you know, we didn't talk about video transmission. And, you know, and we didn't, I mean, we talked about business. And that is really, I think, a big change, Sandy, for the guys running this now. I really believe that we focus a little too much on being salesmen. We focus a little bit too much on being technicians. And we need to really focus on running the business and setting that direction. And that, I think, is very difficult for a lot of our integrators. I think if they could embrace that, they'd all be much better off. And we would get paid faster, Sandy.
Yeah, you're absolutely right. I think we're going to see a lot more of this on next year's PSA-TEC agenda. But summers are coming. Either your kids, grandkids, or neighbors will be out of school. Hire them for the summer and at least understand what they do with social media, if nothing else, because it's an inexpensive way to understand how do they live their lives differently, help you understand how it can help you in your business. And there's several courses out there that teach it. And as I say, I think you'll be doing a lot more of that here. Great input. Anybody else have any input? Oh,
yeah,
thank you.
To kind of build on it, one of the things that we've been seeing the need for is to be much more proactive in running your business. Don't let your business just run by itself. Is your job costing strong and under control? Is your engineering review complete to make sure that nothing is overlooked? Look at your staff on a regular basis. How are you measuring them? Do they know where they stand? Do you have the right staff? We're seeing a need to get a higher technically group with the IT, with the engineering knowledges, and less of the wire pullers. We're finding that work is getting subbed out to electricians or other trades. And so that we're coming back and doing what's most important, which makes sure the connections and the systems and the programming are all together. We're finding that there's a need in the sales process to be proactive and bring in a team. The days of a single sales guy going out, meeting with the client, coming up with the system, getting a contract are diminishing because you need to have people at that table who can talk. You need to come to a sales process with an IT guy who can sit down and talk IT to the IT guy so that they are talking together. You need to bring your people who are going to be doing the training in to work with those who are going to be the day-to-day operational people to let them understand that they're going to get training on these systems. And so that was the biggest thing. And again, running your business. Do you have a real strong business management system? Do you know I mean, we can all talk about gas and the cost of gas. Do you all know what your mileage is on your trucks, where your trucks are, and how are there ways that you can curb those costs? And it only can be done by being proactive on your business.
I think the really good comments. What I didn't hear you say, but you started to touch on it, is that hiring the right salespeople today is very different. And I think what's really challenging is taking a salesperson who's used to selling a $50,000 job and trying to get them to sell a $50 a month recurring revenue contract. It may be a different sales force altogether. And I think if you change at the top and have different goals in your business, one of the key things to do is look at your compensation program. If you can't change that to help support what's going to happen, don't expect change to really happen. And the other thing that we're seeing, and that I didn't hear brought up, is using the internet to provide services. I think that's one of the biggest changes I've seen is how you communicate with your customers, what you do. More and more of you are doing remote management and providing a lot of things. And while David's talking about all the new competition coming in, think of all the new things that you can provide. I was just reading an article on the way to here, and it was talking about there's now these washable RFID tags, where stealing luxury sheets and towels is a big multi-million-dollar problem. Is that something in your future, is monitoring that, providing RFID? You really have to look at your customer base today in a much different way and understand what it is that they need that you can provide. The internet is allowing you to do a variety of things in a very different way. And David, would you agree that when they're monitoring as an integrator, the issues can be completely different? And Bill, you probably can address that too. What are some of the logical things that your members have seen that are logical recurring revenue services? Anybody could speak to that, but I think
So
both
this
of
is
you
me?
can. Yeah, if you would mind.
Well, naturally, our company's basic alarm monitoring is what our companies do. But if you remember, I talked about the new entrants coming in and some of the existing players adding additional components, the energy management, the lighting control, and so forth. What all that comes down to for our companies that we're seeing is that the more recurring services you can sell to a customer, it makes them stickier. It makes them hold on to you better. So you got the basic burglar alarm monitoring, you got fire alarm monitoring. We also provide a hosted video service for our companies that give live view and archival view of video to cell phones, any internet connection, and so forth. That's an additional recurring revenue stream. It's not a replacement for a DVR on site, but the DVR doesn't get you any recurring revenue, but remote hosted video services do get you a recurring revenue stream. And once a customer has full access to their video on their cell phone, it's amazing how much stickier they like it. It's fun, it's good for them. Service agreements, we encourage service agreements on every system put in the field. Inspection agreements. Like I said, it's just a pure recurring revenue mindset. And one of the things that Sandy hit on, we talked about a salesperson selling a $50,000 system this week, and then suddenly next week they have to sell a $50 a month system. From a salesperson's perspective, you have to change that compensation plan because a salesperson's smart. Wherever the money is, they'll go. If you put the commission plan on the recurring, they will sell recurring. If you put it on the upfront, they'll sell the upfront and not get the recurring. It's not a mindset of hiring different salespeople, it's just structuring your program to get the result that you want.
Yeah, good. I could see you taking good notes, so I hope you're going to say something.
Sandy, we've identified 5 areas that the audience can immediately participate in, 3 in video and 2 in access control. You have alarm verification at the bottom of the food chain, which thousands and thousands of people are doing, and you know the products better than I do, you know, the video fides, and many of the local law enforcement authorities are even demanding this, right, Dave, where you have some type of, so that's at the bottom of the food chain, not a huge moneymaker, but yes, you can make a few dollars. We then go to interactive video monitoring, which requires some basic intelligence, say a Cernium or a Video IQ. That would be the second level. And the third level, and the most expensive, is full range guard replacement with video, which of course requires a central station. And I think Dave would agree with me, preferably a UL CSAA 5 diamond type operation, which is the top of the food chain. So there's 3 levels of video.
Yeah, that's right.
That there's no reason that our integrators cannot participate in immediately, other than the fact that they just don't want to change. On the access control side, there's 2. There's hosted and there's managed. And those speak for themselves. You can either manage it yourself for your end user, or you can host it for your end user. And you don't have to have the services because they're available on a wholesale basis. So the tools are available, Sandy. It's just a matter of embracing them and understanding them.
So here we have it. It's available to you, and there's no reason not to change. In fact, there's a lot of reasons why you have to change. Matt, you're kind of an anomaly because you also own a central station in addition to being a systems integrator. What do you see? I'd really love to get your perspective on this.
I think one of the things is to take advantage of the cloud. You talked about the 3 levels of video. There's actually a 4th, which is the remote storage of the systems. And again, if you want to hold on, make the client sticky, as was mentioned, that as much of the information of their systems you can get off-site, the longer they're going to stay with you, the less likely they can go elsewhere. You know, we've done managed access since the modem was first developed, and we find we still have those clients today because they don't have the software on site. They can't just bring in somebody else. You need to look at things like health monitoring of systems. We're always in our companies looking for ways to say, what type of an RMR can I get besides just the standard monitoring, whether it's video or alarms of any kind. And so we've been doing more and more with health monitoring. So if the local DVR has issues, it can get back to us and we can fix it, or if the IT systems aren't converting, and now there's actually some units out there you can actually monitor power supplies. And there again, that's a nice recurring revenue base. And then also the things we're looking at to make sure that we're always pushing our software support plans, licensing, the same things that the IT world is used to paying anyway. And so there again, it becomes more of a recurring model. And another thing we've started working on and charging for is help desk support. If a client calls up and says, how do I do this? Not my system's not working right, but how do I do this? I forget. Those are chargeable calls. And so you can create a nice little base on that. And then some clients, we actually said, well, look, I'll tell you what, just pay us a straight fee and you can call us for whatever you want. And then nowadays with, you know, remote PC connections, we can get into the systems and control them. And again, you're building a much more recurring base. You're providing high-level customer service and solutions that the clients are going to see value. And then that is the way they stay with you because they see the service. You know, I always said it in the monitoring business, in the burglar alarm portion, your best client was the open and close customer because you talked to them at least once a week. And you had value. They saw you that interaction. Well, now take that concept and do that with the managed services and the taking advantage of the cloud, and you're going to have that client's going to say, gee, that's the company I want to be taking care of me because I'm always seeing them.
Yeah, I think that's great information. I think if you don't see how your business can change to be much more profitable, I've just seen 3 or 4 great ideas here that will really help. I think David has something to add.
Yes, Sandy, let me,
sure.
I just want to say something that kind of sums up the concept of recurring monthly revenue. During the economic downturn, because everybody here has been talking about it from the systems integrator perspective, because your business was down, margins were down, hard to get financing, hard to get jobs done, hard to get paid. I assume your profits were down during the period also. I will tell you unequivocally, as our companies in the central station monitoring side generally invest to get new customers, it costs us money. We don't get enough. We don't make profits generally on the installation. I will tell you, though our customer base did not significantly grow over the past number of years, unequivocally, every company made significantly more money during the period. We just didn't get to grow. And that goes back to the reliance upon the recurring revenue and the steady state cash flow that comes from that recurring revenue. It is a change of mindset, but I think that everybody up here has talked about it to some degree, and you do need to try to embrace it.
I think it couldn't have been said better. If even during the economic downturn, we did not see a change in valuations for alarm monitoring companies. In fact, the bigger they were, the more sought after they were, and the multiples were as high as we've ever seen them. So I think you're absolutely right. And unfortunately, systems integrator valuations went down a bit because there wasn't that recurring revenue component. So the closer you get to that 15-year window where people like Bill are going to retire, and maybe you are as well, the more you add to it now, the more value that business that you've worked so hard at and doing a great job is going to be worth more if you're able to change that recurring revenue. It's critical to you. Paul?
So we heard about 3 different types of video monitoring, right? And when I really kind of think whether it's video monitoring, nurse call, when I think it's whether it's ERP or SAP or Oracle or et cetera, these are all applications. So our clients live in a really a business-driven IT, right, environment that requires them to maintain their network to be up and running and always on. So what we've done is to kind of look first at the end user as the top person that you really want to consider what is it that they need to be productive and efficient, and what are the applications. And once you understand those applications, you then work your way back, and you actually can almost draw a circle around all the other little pieces in between. So I would think, being in the physical security space and beginning to do a lot of this monitoring, there is a lot of other pieces of equipment that are interconnected in order to deliver that access control, that nurse call solution, that you know, the video solution, the video security, and so on. Look at those as natural extensions to what you're already monitoring, and begin to, you know, to hone your level of expertise to be able to support those types of products. You already have the relationship with the client, so leverage it. And I think clients are willing to pay more for that kind of one-stop shop. I think based on that, other organizations in our space also look at things like optimization, so regular tuning of the network, building assessment services that can be launched remotely, that provide detailed data, that help, again, clients to understand what the impact on their network and other things that they may be adding to it. Again, another additional revenue driving capability. So,
how many of you have customers here that are security companies? Big surprise. Of course not. That you don't have, so not a single one of your customers is in the security business. They should be outsourcing all of their security and back office things. It really makes them much more efficient and allows them to focus on their customer and the business that they're in. I think you bring up a great point. We don't have a customer here, but since Tony represents a lot of end users and customers, are there things that we didn't talk about that you know that they would value and that these folks can provide?
There's a big one.
Oh, good.
For NFCA, I used to give a class called The Architects Will Call You. And the one thing I haven't heard really us pound on is the fact that how do you get in there from the beginning? Because if you're a part of the process from the beginning, and I say that as RTKL, as we grew in our technology design studio, one of the things that we introduced was technology master planning. And one of the things that, and Max Stevens will be here on Wednesday speaking about wireless security, is that Max came up with a program to actually do security assessments for a client. And he combined the technique of master planning and assessing together so that when you meet with a client, you actually sit down and say, what are your security needs for the next 4 to 5 years? What's your plan for integration? Well, I don't have one. Well, do you have a plan for new buildings you're going to build? I absolutely do. Shouldn't we have a technology master plan then that goes side by side with all the new buildings you're going to implement? Yes. Have you thought about your applications? No, I have not. Have you thought about your platform? No, I have not. Have you thought about how you're going to connect from one building to the other? No, I have not. Have you thought about the monitoring situation that you're going to do? Are you going to go back to a public safety entity? Is this going to be, you know, done within yourself internally? And so we came up with a nice assessment documentation, and we perform service level agreements with integrators and other partners and bring everyone to the table to sit down and talk to a client to actually prepare for that new facility or prepare for how are we going to implement our new technology. So planning is very important, and finding ways to get to the client in the beginning. And one of those keys is understanding that you just don't look for an RFP as far as, okay, everything's done, now they're going to call me. That was the old mindset that the telephone people had. It's that, you know what, we'll do everything for the building, and then we'll call the telephone guy and he'll put it in and we're not going to worry about that anymore. But technology has changed to such a point. And I'll give you an example. I'll try to be very brief. I'll give you an example. We were designing the National Oceanic Association's facility in Washington, D.C. Now, the architects had performed what they call a design charrette, where they had everything ready to go. And they called me up and they said, hey, we're gonna go down there. We want you an electrical engineer to show up. So they've got all these renderings and models and layouts for the clients, and they're like, isn't this great? And it was my first year at the company. And I went, well, how are you going to get service in the building? And where's your closets at? And and they started realizing that this is not just a phone company anymore. This is not just a camera I'm going to put in and call up the integrator. They want these things planned from the beginning, because it takes so much space and so much bandwidth to do what we do anymore from an IP perspective. You have to plan those spaces. You have to plan their cooling, the power for them, and everything else. Therefore, security is no different. It should be a part of that initial plan. So getting to be a part of that team that actually goes in and performs the initial assessments, that goes in and starts talking to a client when their project is in its infancy, is very, very important. And I think that's something that, as an industry, you need to start focusing on. Bixby has evolved because Bixby did just that. It evolved into, hey, these are all phone guys. I'm an ex-Bell guy. They were all phone guys that said, hey, how do we get in from the beginning? How do we get people to understand that, you know, we don't want the janitor's closet to be the telephone closet? How do we get in and help them to understand and to plan for these things? And your industry has to do the same. Security has to do the exact same. And even as a firm, we started out at RTKL as just, you know, telecom design. But eventually we realized we had to evolve into security design, to audio visual, and now wireless is a big deal. Wireless design. So I would say that planning is very important. Understanding the master planning process, understanding how assessments are done, or getting people in your staff who understand assessments, who understand master planning, can do nothing but help, you know.
Where do you hire those people, or where do you gain those skills?
Well, there's different ways of gaining those skills. I'll tell you, Bixby has a lot of training in that area. I was going to save that for the last one there.
Oh, okay.
But to talk about it a little bit, but
right.
There's different ways you can get that.
Great. And one of the things I haven't heard now is, and I know a lot of your members are moving into the mass evacuation and communication. How is that changing? And is there a recurring revenue component to that, or is there a logical transition for these folks to be doing that?
Well, this whole, you know, M&EC thing that we'll be talking about later, and what Tony was talking about, his class, by the way, won him the Instructor of the Year for NSCA a couple years ago. People left that room like with the deer in the headlight look, because we as we as integrators often forget that the end user is the person that ultimately we have to satisfy in all this. The integration between audiovisual and security is happening at a very, very rapid pace. I had the privilege of touring a control and command center in a very, very large metropolitan police department recently. I was in a room about this size that they monitor in this room, I think it's 5,500 remote CCTV cameras using 2,000 micro tiles, 2,000 displays in one room, control centers throughout the room and everything. They could pull down video from police helicopters. They can look at any street corner in the city. Fabulous, fabulous project. That systems integrator, and one sad note is, of all of the NSCA members out there, we had only 2 that were capable of bidding that project because of the bonding capacity on that job. It was right around a $19 million project, and this was just this room. It wasn't the cameras or anything like that. But to Tony's point, they had to do a technology master plan. They had to go through and do a risk assessments. They signed a 5-year service agreement on this to do licensing audits and to make sure that all the technology that they tied to wouldn't become obsolete during that 5 years. It is the most amazing way that I've ever seen someone lock in that client. That client would never be able to abandon that integrator because it's so tied into all the product upgrades, the services, the remote monitoring, and all that. So we're seeing not only on the M&EC side with huge campus type connectivity to voice evacuation, fire security, all that, but we're seeing this control and command thing really taking off now. So, and it's big projects with a lot of recurring revenue opportunities.
You know, some of this sounds scary to me, but if I've been in the industry over 30 years, and I'm probably closer to retirement than you are, Bill, but and this may sound daunting, but ever since I've known my very first systems integrator, your business has changed all the time. You have been constant learners of new technology. You've been constant learners of new customer demands. You have really been, and that's why I call you the industry magicians. You have really risen to the occasion. And I asked a stupid question, where do you get that information? Of course it'll be at PSA-TEC next year if it's not here this year. Sorry, I apologize. You know, last year, Chuck, you mentioned some things that were changing as far as legislation and rules were concerned. I'm going to ask all of you on the panel, are there any mandates or legislation that's going to change or affect what these folks do?
Well, if I can tell the group what I'm hearing right now, the big thing to watch for is prevailing wage right now. That is huge. We're getting a call, 2 or 3 calls probably a day on what is the right SOC code for prevailing wage on that particular project and based on what type of work that's going on. So be very, very careful. Call us first. We can help you create that, get a classification for the job before you bid it. Don't call the day that the bid is due. Call us like a week before that and we can do some good. The other thing we're seeing is sales tax and Department of Labor audits right now. We have a member that because of the way that they did not charge sales tax on the assembly labor. In their state, labor is tax exempt, but if the product gets finished, say you build a security console, the question comes in is that labor taxable when what is delivered from your shop is a complete assembly? So make sure you contact us about sales tax too. This member of ours got advice from their CPA firm to the contrary of what the state that he was working in found as far as the department, I don't remember which department it was, Department of Revenue in that state, and he has to pay a $300,000 fine for the last 5 years of sales tax just on the assembly and fabrication. So they're talking some real money, and the states are broke. His state is broke for one, and that's where they're looking right now. So be very, very cautious on that.
Thank you for bringing that to our attention.
I hate being the bearer of all the bad news all the time.
No, but it's important to know.
But this is what people are calling about right now.
It's important to know before they get hit with a $300,000 fine.
Yeah.
Look at it now. Make sure you're in compliance with your own state. Great comment.
To build on that, the prevailing wage is huge. And when I was talking about the project management, that's an area where you can get crushed on a job because now you're no longer paying that guy $25 an hour. You're paying him $50, $60 an hour. And so every hour goes over, it's very expensive to your company. The other thing we're seeing a great deal is licensing has always been part of our industry, but licensing and permits have grown tremendously. The requirement now, it used to be you had to get a permit, probably if you're doing a fire alarm system and maybe had a lock of some sort. Now we're seeing it required for anything that has a wire, period. And then there's a cost associated to that, and some of them can be quite extensive. And so you need to make sure that when you're doing work in your areas, and of course like security, now we do work nationally, we have to look at areas remote to see what those costs and permits are, and we rely on our partners to help us with that. But those are areas that can really come back and hit a job hard.
One thing that we got a couple members going through this right now is they've had a change in ownership of their company, and some states are requiring you to reapply for your own license because of the change of ownership. So make sure if you have done that in the last 2, 3, 4 years that you have also updated your license with the, it's usually the Attorney General's office in the state that manages those.
Any other comments on that? Okay. I think Chuck brought this up before, is consolidation in this marketplace has really blurred the lines in some cases between manufacturer and system integrator, reps, and everyone in the channel is either working together or working apart, and I'm not sure what it is, and PSA vets a lot of their suppliers. But do you see this more as an opportunity where manufacturers are actually helping sell projects, or is there a fine line where you're now competing with the manufacturers? How do you see this? I mean, it's an important part of what you do every day.
And it's really not going to change. If anything, that will intensify. So once again, I go back to embracing it. I either attended a panel just recently, I think it was here, participated in a lot of meetings, where the manufacturer came right out and said, in as friendly a way as he could without being insulting, that the systems integrators just can't have the level of depth, expertise, of knowledge of our software and our capabilities as we can. They just can't do it. They're nice guys, they're smart, but they represent multiple lines, Bill. And look, we need to get in there with our people to call on the end user. We need to drive the business because you can't. I know you don't want to hear this, and I know there's manufacturers here today, but I also believe that you have to be open-minded and think about it. In some cases, that person, that engineer, that sales executive is possibly in a position to know more about the details, because gosh darn it, he's only got that one product. Let's just say it's ABC access control. That's what he does all day. That's what he goes to school for. That's what he eats, sleeps, and breathes. And the CEOs and the senior sales guys at some of the larger manufacturers, they know that. And they say, well, gee, am I going to let Bill, the integrator, go out there and flub up a presentation to the corporate security director at Procter & Gamble? Or am I going to send my own guy out? So here is a challenge for us as systems integrators, is instead of fighting this and saying, I'm really angry at ABC, the manufacturer, how do you get in? How do you position yourself? I mean, it's all about positioning, right? There's no such position, but I always said that the most important job in any company should be Chief Positioning Officer, right? That's more important than anything. How do you get in with ABC access control or ABC high-end, video VMS, and they recommend you? I have not seen the manufacturer, Sandy, wanting to take all the profit. So that's good. So heck, if they can sell it for you and you can reduce your cost of sales, instead of fighting them and saying, I'm not going to deal with ABC because, damn it, they go direct to the end user and cut me out. Well, maybe they'll cut you in and you can reduce your cost of sales. But I tell you guys, I see more and more of it. And Paul, I'd almost like to hear from Paul. Paul, you are Cisco Platinum across the United States.
Gold.
Gold
Cisco is a big difference.
Okay. All right.
Tens of thousands.
How do they do it in the IT business, the big manufacturers? Do they?
So in our industry, we don't have as much of that type of problem. The manufacturers do not go direct. However, what the manufacturers do is they obviously have a lot of feet on the street, and they do go into clients directly, and they influence that client. I think probably some of the problems that we see with that influence is they tend to go after that shiny object, instead of really taking time to understand the client's business and really to go higher and wider in that organization, right? And bundle more into that business solution that you're going to present to the client. So that's probably the biggest challenge that I have. In our industry, again, if there's any instances where a manufacturer is going to go direct, they're going to typically be on somewhere with clients that are, $50 billion and higher. So, and in most of the cases, the one in service member community and my own network, my own networking company, Atrion, we don't really go after that level of enterprise type client. They're typically not high value.
On going direct, Paul, some of our manufacturers, not all, but some of our higher end manufacturers, they're not actually selling direct.
Okay.
They're calling on, they're not, the systems integrator is still receiving the profit on the boxes. Okay. But they're sending their sales force out directly to the end user. But they're bringing the business back to the integrator. Now, if PSA has a manufacturer that goes direct and sells directs, we eliminate them. They're gone. They're out of our system because they don't work. They don't work for our model.
Okay.
But we are having some high-end manufacturers that sell enterprise-level software go directly to the end user, and sometimes they do not bring the integrator with them. Right? Have you guys seen this? I mean, this is happening. Yeah. But they are bringing the business back to their preferred integrator.
I agree with Bill. I absolutely believe there's an opportunity. And what's really important about this, as long as you're absolutely right, that they don't go out and sell direct, is they really have to create the interest. You don't have the time. And I'll tell you, with all the products that you need to know, are you going to know the specific feature set or the benefit that that a hospital could use or a school could use. And today it's not all customers look alike. That you have to help them with their compliance issues. You have to help them really work with what are the important issues. And I think you've really hit it. I think you have to look a little differently. They're not competing with you. I think as a team, you have a better chance of closing the sale.
So I'll go back then. So Bill, our communities are similar in that way. So we do see that. And it really comes down to, you know, are your salespeople going to be invested in wanting to sit down and do some type of heat mapping in a client environment? So do we do the work up front to engage with the supplier, the manufacturer, to actually have a discussion about what you're doing with a particular client so that they understand where you are in the sales process, they're still a part of it, but what your intention is, right? And most of the time, you don't have salespeople that want to do that, right? They're going to say, well, I bring in the manufacturer, they're going to mess things up. They're going to, I bring in the manufacturer and I don't know if, you know, they're going to have someone else that they might engage. Or, you know, there's no intentional, really sit down, strategic thinking about the client and then sharing that information. I think when you do that, and I know I've seen great instances where that's happened, and when that happens, usually the size of the deal is much larger, and the relationship between that supplier begins to pay multiples back because you now become a lot more strategic from the relationship and working with them.
So if I may, what you're saying is get them engaged. If you have a relationship with an end user who you know has an issue that you're going to work, bring that vendor in, and then before you walk in and make a sales pitch, really decide who's going to say what and what you're going to do and what the strategy is.
Yeah, one last comment on that, because it worries me. It worries me that we'll lose, our integrators will lose business, and consequently we'll lose business if our guys aren't working it properly. If you haven't studied some of the project registration programs, I suggest that you do so. I'm sure most of you have. This is becoming more commonplace in our business. So once again, if you have not studied some of the larger manufacturers' project registration programs, please do so, because this factors into how this type of business is done. It can be really, really good for you if you know how to play the game and if you embrace it. Or it can be really, really bad for you because you'll be out.
You know, Bill, you're right. SecurityNet works on a nationalized basis. We deal with some of the largest manufacturers. And one of the things we're finding is that you have got to be heavily engaged with them because they will drive business to you or more importantly with you. But you have to have a plan. You can't just say, hey, I'm going to go see XYZ on Thursday, come with me. It's extremely important. They also look for product loyalty. So one of the things that happens a lot of times is you hear the complaint, well, the manufacturer went out and talked to my customer directly and that wasn't the product I was speccing. Well, that's why they were going out. They want their product in. They don't want the competitor's product in. So if you have the good, strong relationships with your vendors and you communicate with them on a regular basis, don't carry 15 lines of access control and 25 lines of cameras, curb down what you got, you're going to find that they'll actually be another arm of your sales force. And if they know that if they bring you an opportunity or work with you on an opportunity, you're going to stay with their product, they'll bring more your way, and they'll be less likely to go to your competitor across the street and give him the lead as well.
I think, again, this is why being a member of PSA is really important, is because they're going to look for vendors that are going to build the kind of relationships that will help you grow and help you close more sales. We have time for one closing question, and I'm going to ask you to go quickly. What one suggestion would you each make to these attendees right now that would make their time at PSA-TEC more worthwhile? One suggestion. Paul, why don't we start with you? I could start with somebody else.
Yeah, well, come back to me.
Chuck, do you want me to start with you?
What I would do is pay attention to the business issues as much as you do the technology. We get enamored. I'm a tech geek like nobody's business, so I get enamored by all that, but really the thing to pay attention to is all the services and tools that Bill and his team have helped prepare for you to help you run your business better and become more profitable, more savvy about what you need to do in this changing economy and everything.
Good comment. Tony?
Take some time and stop by the Big C booth that's going to be there on Wednesday. I'm actually chairman of Bixie's credentialing committee, and basically I'm in charge of all the various credentials. And what we're doing right now is we're going through job task analysis for each of our credentials so that we can set up and market the true capabilities of each one of our credentialed individuals. And one of the credentials we have is the electronic security designer. And it's pretty good, because if you look into this course and look into having someone within your organization that is familiar with this course, familiar with this information, familiar with the design reference manual, you'll see that we have tied a lot of security issues with IT issues, with infrastructure issues, with project management issues, with we even have a chapter on legal issues that you may look at. So it's worth investing. Stop by the Bixie booth. I plan to hang out there for a little bit and help Mr. Hand promote the organization. I think that really appreciate Bixie being invited to participate in this, and I hope that this grows the relationship like we did with InfoComm and other organizations.
Okay.
So thank you for having me here.
Thank you.
It's kind of a twofold. Engage and network. There are a lot of great companies here, a lot of really smart people here. Network, talk to people, ask them how they run their business, and listen. Don't keep talking about all the time how I do this, I do this, I do this, because we all know what we do ourselves. But what do the other people do, and then are there ways that you can bring that into your business to make you better? I don't think not one person knows it all, but within this group, we probably all do.
Good. I'm not going to ask you, I'm going to have you do the last word, if you don't mind, David.
I want to resound what Chuck said, actually. Look at the products from the perspective of the business side of it. Look at them as far as what services that can garner recurring monthly revenue around those products that you can provide. Stay that focused.
Good, well said.
And I'll kind of piggyback on what Matt said, and you know, I think I see a lot of camaraderie here, you know, when I attend this event, and obviously there's a tremendous amount of talent and experience in this room and so on. I would be more strategic, probably engaging with people you know that you will meet here in order to find little one-on-one breakout sessions so that you can talk about some of these, you know, these topics that are on your mind. Get more strategic, you know. Don't leave it in the room here or at this event as well. Continue to keep that relationship, and almost kind of on a maybe a monthly call or maybe having your engineer guys creating lifelines and so on. I'd say build on the relationship and leverage that for as much as you can get from it.
Step outside of your comfort zone. If you're and I know that's difficult, but if you're a technically oriented person, why not meet and network? We're the best networking there is. Why not meet and network with a sales-oriented or a business-oriented person? If you're a sales-type guy, then why don't you take a look at some of the technical offerings or some of the bit, but step outside. Don't do the same exact thing. Don't talk to the same exact people. I mean, this is a great opportunity for you to broaden your horizons.
Again, I have to say I have learned a great deal. You've been a wonderful audience. I know it's hard for bright people like you to sit quietly, and I appreciate you allowing us to ask the questions here. I can't thank the 6 of you enough for all the great wisdom and good ideas. I thank you all. Have a great day. Thank you.